Hello everybody, welcome into our latest live video. It's Friday, the 28th of February, 2025. It's the last day of February, right? Tomorrow's the 1st of March, I think. Welcome in, and thank you for joining us. I'm fighting a little bit of a cold here, so we were originally planning to have our good friend Mitch join us, but Mitch has a bunch of traveling ahead of him. I certainly don't want to get him sick. I don't even know how I got sick, but my voice is a little bit shot. I'm feeling better than I was earlier in the week. And we're going to shift some things around because the show must go on. And we're going to, on today's show, we're going to take the parts that we removed out of the big Cougar case that has a little spinning dais on it. We've already removed those videos if you've been watching. We already removed the parts in the previous video, is what I meant to say. And we have this CORSAIR H500M case, which is a much bigger case, which I think will house that MSI Meg, is it the ACE? The Z690 board with the 14900K processor. And we're keeping the Cougar Helor 360mm radiator, liquid cool radiator on there. And I think this case is going to do a lot better job of holding this giant EATX board along with the cooler, who's getting overcrowded in that Cougar case. We'll repurpose the Cougar case for something not quite so large, taking up so much room on the inside. I'm thinking one of the Ultra 7 builds or something, maybe the Ultra 9. I can't remember what I've got left with regards to some prepped boards, but I'm pretty sure somewhere around here I have an Ultra 7 or an Ultra 9 waiting for a case. But we'll get to that. We'll cross that bridge later when we get to it. Today's task is simply to take a look at this new H500M from CoolerMaster. Now I say new because it's new to me. This case has been out 5 or 6 years. In fact, it's pretty well canceled in the United States. When I tried to find a link for this, it's pretty difficult to find one for sale here in the US. And CoolerMaster's US website no longer has a placeholder for it. So it still shows it in another country. In fact, I just bring up the page here because this is their global, they being CoolerMaster, this is their global website. And if I switch over to the US website, this case does not exist. So I'm a little late to the game when it comes to checking this case out, but it looks ideal. And what drew my attention at the time, it was on sale. Now I know why. They were obviously clearing out old inventory as they move on to other case designs. So we got a good deal on it. Thankfully, it arrived in perfect shape. At least I think it did. I mean, we'll open it up, but from the outside, it looks good. And yeah, this is a pretty large case. And they don't really tell us much about it in here, do they? Scroll up. Go to the specifications tab. Here we go. So just taking a look at this, again, without really doing any major research, just more or less taking a glance at the specs, this looks like it's going to accommodate those parts so much better. And I think it's just going to look better, fit better. And we just happened to snag one at the right time. So some of this stuff, you can't make it up. I can't predict what I'm going to need or when it's going to be available or when it's going to go on sale. But yeah, we've got EATX board support. Now the Cougar case also supported EATX, but in doing so you had to remove the little cable hiding management panel from the front, and it just started getting really overcrowded. So if you missed me disassembling that computer, it never got fully built because we just ran out of space for all the cables and hardware. As a result, it's going to require a rethink with what we're going to put back in there. Now over at Amazon, which is where I'm pretty sure I bought this, it says it's no longer available. This might have been even purchased using a service called Woot, W-O-O-T, that often works together with Amazon. It goes through Amazon, but it's listed as Woot, it's purchased as Woot, but it ships from Amazon and it comes from Amazon. It gets a little confusing, but it seems like, and I don't know how the relationship between Woot and Amazon works, but it looks like when Amazon's trying to clearance out some stuff, even potentially at a loss financially, they work with Woot to get that old inventory out and get that warehouse space freed up for a product that is moving. That's the appearance anyway. But despite this case being 5 or 6 years old from when it originally debuted, it's still very modern looking. I don't think it looks old at all. And I like all of the ports at the front, the 2 USB Type A, USB 3, 2 USB Type A, USB 2, the USB-C right there in the middle, headphone and microphone jack, power button, reset switch. It's fully loaded. Now granted, a case like this is not likely going to be very light once you put all your parts in it. And I'm prepared for that. It's got a nice power supply shroud. You can see we can put a graphics card in vertically if we choose to, but that's the case we're working with. I've not done any prep or rehearsal, or as always, I just turn the camera on and give you a fly on the wall sort of perspective of what's going on here with computer building, some of the challenges we face, and how we very rarely see the same computer twice. So we're always looking at how things go together, how it all starts to make sense, what varies one manufacturer from another, where are the benefits and where are the potential downfalls of certain builds or certain manufacturers that we often just can't speculate until we get into it, get into the weeds with it. And then suddenly it becomes very clear. So that's what got us to this position. Was I assumed, obviously wrongfully, that Cougar case was going to be big enough for what we needed it to do. And while the case is physically about the same size, component-wise, it just didn't accommodate that many components very well. We could have forced it, but it would have been a nightmare to work on it. It would have been a nightmare to do anything to it, and it would not have looked as good. Essentially, it would have been overcrowded. It would have looked overcrowded. Even when it was clean and functional and we did everything we could with the cabling, it's still going to look overcrowded. So there's a combination of a couple of factors. One is, do you really need all the stuff in there? Number one. And number two, is there a better case that would hold all those parts better in a way that's easier to work on it and it's going to look better? Anytime things get overcrowded, there's a sense of, for me, of feeling overwhelmed. There's a sense of almost claustrophobia. So to have a nice open space that you can work in, be able to get in there in the future without any hassles to get in and do what you need to do for repairs or upgrades, as well as just the overall look and aesthetic of it, is far more pleasing. So it's in everybody's advantage that you plan that out accordingly. Now, I'm in a fortunate situation where I don't have to plan anything out. I can eyeball it, say that case looks good, that motherboard looks good, that RAM looks good. 9 times out of 10, maybe 8 times out of 10 lately, everything goes together fine. Every once in a while, we run into something that, well, in the process of actually doing it instead of thinking about doing it, when we actually do it, then we find out things that we wouldn't have known otherwise. And so for that, it's no big deal for me because, again, having all the parts I've got laying around here, we play a little musical chairs with the parts until we make sure that the right color board and the right size of board is in the right color case with the right size case. And most of the time I can nail it, but every once in a while I get a little surprised. And I like to share that learning experience with you, so you don't have to take my word for my conclusions. You're there joining me live, and you can see where I'm making mistakes or where I am under or overestimating what the case can do, what my expectations are, and how my expectations will get quickly adjusted by reality, whether I like it or not. So this isn't a matter of what I want to believe. I can believe whatever I want. It doesn't change the world around me. I believe I'm 10 feet tall. I believe I weigh 600 pounds. But that doesn't change the reality. Most other YouTube channels, they're going to make a video, they're going to edit it, they're going to get paid by one of the manufacturers of the parts. They're basically making you a commercial. And if you like watching commercials, well, you probably aren't going to like this channel. But if you like to watch a real technician do real work on real parts that is completely unscripted, there is no agenda, there's no propaganda. We're just here to show the reality of the business. A standard day in life of a tech, you're going to encounter hardware. If you're a field service tech, every day is going to be a different challenge. But they all have something in common. They all have the same foundation upon which, once you've established that, the variations are very minor. And while sometimes it does trip me up a little bit, I don't fall completely on my face. I just get right back up, dust myself off, and get right back to work. We fixed every single computer problem that's ever come in here. We have successfully built every computer we set out to build. Even if it means we had to return parts or order different parts, we do what it takes to get the job done. And we share that experience with you so that when there are stumbling points, you don't have to pay for that lesson. You get to enjoy it free by living vicariously through the person actually doing the work. And that doesn't mean you won't make mistakes. That just means you won't make the mistakes I make, right? You'll still make your own mistakes. And if you're not making mistakes, why bother getting out of bed in the morning? Because at that point, you're just a machine. Making mistakes is your assurance that you're growing and learning every day. If you think mistakes are embarrassing or shameful, then I think that thinking is embarrassing and shameful unless you're a machine. So if you think you're a machine, it doesn't mean you are one. Allow yourself the opportunity to make mistakes, because when you look at the most successful companies that are out there right now, when you look at like Facebook or Google or anything Elon Musk gets his hands in, it's always about breaking things. You keep pushing it and pushing it until you break it, and then you just take one step back. So it's a very common Silicon Valley attitude to break things, because until you break them, you don't know what their tolerance is. You don't know what extra there is that you don't need to have. So you go without it and see what happens. It's a very old school way of handling reality versus sitting down and theorizing everything on paper. Just get in there, do it, see what the results are. Do we need this part? I don't know. Let's see what happens if we don't use it. Well, the whole thing fell apart. Okay, put it back. But in the meantime, if you removed 5 parts and only one of them needed to be put back, that's progress. You've learned, you understand what that part is for. Now you can still go to school and you can still pay all the money for tuition and you can learn all this theory. But those lessons, first of all, are not necessarily accurate to reality at all times. And furthermore, the lessons don't stay with you in the same way that experience stays with you. So, well, I appreciate people that, enjoy watching the content. I encourage all of you, and I hope it inspires you to do things yourself, to do your own repairs, to do your own upgrades. Come here, look for guidance. We're happy to guide you. But we're not necessarily here to spoon feed. In other words, we're happy to show you how to cook, as a metaphor, but we're not here to spoon feed. You still have to get on your own 2 feet and do the work, but you don't have to do it blindly. We'll help guide you. And some people either just want to watch entertainment with no educational value, which is fine. There's plenty of that here on YouTube. Some people just want people to do work for them for free. Well, that's good. You can want that all day, but that's not what we do here. But if you want to be self-reliant and you want to stand on your own 2 feet, you just need a little help getting back up on your feet. We will help you out. We will point you in the right direction. As long as you're willing to do the work, we will assist you with any questions or concerns or stumbling points along the way. We're there to pick you back up if you need a hand, but we're not going to move your feet for you. And it's those people, once you whittle it down to the people that are actually benefiting from being inspired and doing the work and building their own experience, that is the baseline and foundation of why this channel exists. So we do hope that it inspires you. We do hope that if you run into stumbling blocks, you don't beat yourself up and you're not embarrassed by it. None of us were born with the knowledge. We have to get it one way or another. And the best way is through experience. And if you run into a problem, don't be bashful, don't be shy, and don't be ashamed. Come in, explain what the problem is. We have one of the nicest communities of this size that exists anywhere on the internet. And so long as you're a nice person, you're not insulting people or putting people down, you're welcome to join us in the live chat. You're welcome to ask any questions how else are you going to know if you don't ask, right? We don't care how smart you are. We don't care how dumb you are, right? Or wherever you think you are in that spectrum. We just want you to be nice. And so long as you're nice, everybody wins. So hope you're checking out our live chat. Let me say hello to everybody joining us. I hope my voice will last throughout the stream here, but we'll see how far I get. Let's see who is joining us today. Reese Prodis became a supporter. Right on. Thank you, Reese. Thanks for becoming a member here. Dwayne Blackwelder says hello, as does Darren Gilholm and Al Finesca. Our friend Buster with a 10-pound super chat, and also a few super chats left under some videos that were converted to members-only videos. Buster, thank you so much for your continued support, your friendship. Buster says, good evening, Carrie and Marlena and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, where the temperature in Edinburgh, 41 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 5 degrees Celsius. Ooh, sounds a little chilly. Good to see you, my friend. William Denton says hello from Nassau, where it's 77 degrees. Dazzle555 joins us, along with Eddie Casanova and Thomas Mac T. We see Jonathan in there, as well as Alan Lindos saying hello. Acronis joins us. There's Begowden. Good to see our friend Begowden. Always good to see you. If you have questions for Acronis, even though that's not today's subject, they are hanging out in the chat. And if you have any questions, I can't think of anyone better to ask. And you have that opportunity during this live video to have the very most knowledgeable person about Acronis that I've ever met in my life. You've got his ear right now. So feel free to put shift number 2 or the @ symbol with the word Acronis to direct your message to them, and they will respond to you. Regardless of what we're talking about on video, you're welcome to have that conversation in the chat room. There's our friend Planet Cryos, joins us with a $5 super chat. He says, have a great show. We're having a family night playing Monopoly while eating tacos. I'll watch it later. Enjoy your evening. Enjoy your Friday night, Planet Cryos. Peter from the Netherlands says hello. Welcome in, Peter. And Marsman50 says hello. There's Luke Greenia joining us from Vermont. Scott and Leslie Cavins join us and say hello. There's Eugene Eldago and Mark Gaines joining us. Of course, Marlena, our channel administrator, they're in the chat saying hello to everybody. Craig Wilson just became a supporter. Right on. Thank you so much. We wouldn't have a channel without our supporters. YouTube now is you know, it's changing. There's a great video if you're interested in the challenges currently in the situation that is YouTube and what it's become. There's a couple of guys that you may have heard of, and they interview content creators. And the most recent interview is the CEO of Patreon. And they have a very open conversation about what's happening behind the scenes at YouTube and why people are struggling. And this is a very long video. About a 2-hour conversation, but again, it's very open. And while a lot of it is still going to be opinion, let me go back here. This video says subscribers are dead. So what that means is that the value that content creators once placed on subscribers is fading away, and it's declined for the last 2 or 3 years. As a result, content creators have to find a new way to generate revenue to pay for their content. And the argument becomes one of, do you want to be creative and end up not making any money, or do you want to be creative, creative as an artist versus creative as a business, where maybe the things you're creating you're not proud of and it doesn't feel right, but it's earning you money. But the things you really want to do, the things that you're creating, that you have a regular audience that keeps coming back, YouTube, as far as subscribers goes, has sort of diminished that value as they continue to provide sort of a for you feed that YouTube thinks they can provide you with content you want to see better than you can decide for yourself. This is what's happening across the board with Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. They all do this now. So how does a business get repeat customers? And I think we're ahead of that with our memberships. And our memberships are what make this work. And thankfully, we got that started before this continues to get worse. It's the worst I've ever seen it with regards to how many repeat viewers do you get versus how many new viewers. Right now, for me, it's about 50-50. And I'll tell you, it's never been that way before. Usually it used to be about 80% returning viewers, about 20% new viewers. So now there's this discovery where you get one viewer one time, you never see them again, they never see you again, they don't even know who you are. The longer form content that I make encourages interaction, and so the likelihood of getting return viewers on long form content versus a short is much, much higher, but still the problem remains, at least for the vast majority of content creators. So it's a very difficult business model to figure out. But I'm just telling you that because if I had seen where this was going to go 2 years ago and I turned memberships on now, it'd probably be too late. I probably would have already just lost everything, just trying to keep it, the cost of keeping it going. So I can't thank the members enough, because it's because of the members that this video exists today, and we can do these videos as often as we do them and as long as they can go, because the community is financing it essentially. And in return, we want to include the community as much as possible in the videos. So we encourage that live interaction. A lot of other YouTube channels, if they have live interaction, they don't do a whole lot of it. It almost feels more like a game show to me. We're trying to keep everything real, and so long as we can continue, you know, we're not getting rich off of it, but I do enjoy what I'm doing, and I enjoy sharing it with an audience that appreciates it, which clearly you do. And so long as we all stick together, we're good to go, right? But if these trends on YouTube start affecting the attitudes of the viewers, where they're not coming back to see the same content, well, I don't know what comes next, but it's a very eye-opening interview. And if you have time and if you're interested in the challenges that creators face today, I can tell you I relate with everything they said. I'm on board. I mean, there's no corrections that I have. The challenges are real, and that CEO of Patreon, I've never heard of him before personally, but he seems to really know his stuff. There are some people, like the people in charge at YouTube, that don't seem to have a clear understanding of what it takes to be a content creator. It's so frustrating that the people in charge don't make any videos, or they have a staff do it for them. And they're the ones making all the decisions. Versus Patreon, the guy who runs it clearly understands what it is to create a following and to build content and decide between building content for profit or building content for creativity. And where's the line where you can meet in the middle, or does one exist? He tells a story of a guy that he could not keep his YouTube channel going full time. So rather than sell out, what he did is he just went back to work as a full-time job so he can finance the fun creative outlet he has with YouTube. But that's basically a hobby now. So instead of generating money, it's costing him money, much like any other hobby. You want to fly drones, you got to pay for all the equipment, right? It's a hobby. Would be great is if you could make money from your hobby, right? And that's the challenge. Anyway, it's a great video, wonderful interview. And if you're interested in those challenges that go on behind the scenes for all YouTube channels, it's very eye-opening. So with that, let me jump back over to a chat, because I was saying hello to everybody. Greg Wilson saying hello from the state of Kentucky. Greg says he's a long-time watcher, first-time chatter. You know what? Never too late to say hello in the chat room. Andy Winbridge says greetings from the Netherlands. Ron Barnish joins us. Eugene Eldago says he was lucky enough to get accepted into the president's buyout offer for federal employees. Well, good for you. So many people I know have been let go by companies and get no to little severance at all. So, you know, that beats the alternative, doesn't it? Hold on a second. Try and mute my microphone when I'm coughing here. Kurt Schlegel says hello. There's Bradley Morris saying hello, and Brad Revel. John Williams says hello. David Herzog's joining us here in the chat room. Peter VZ with a €1 super chat contribution, joining us from the Netherlands. Thank you, Peter. Acrona says that is one cool looking case. Yeah, would you even tell by looking at this case that it's already 5 or 6 years old and it's since it was first released? This is a brand new case. I'm just saying, when it was first released was 5 or 6 years ago. Talk about being late to the game. I guess it's not selling well here in the US, so they've stopped selling it. That's my guess. And they'll move on with other designs as the fickle public keeps changing what they think looks good. I can't wait for the day when we're done with RGB. When we get over that, I'm sure it's only a few years away, or at the very least they'll be much more minimized and not so in your face, over the top. There'll always be exceptions, but right now I do feel like RGB fad is really starting to fade, and it likely has something as well to do with the economy, where people aren't spending this excess cash burning a hole in their pocket on just complete nonsense that turns out to be a nightmare to maintain it. So, you know, watching that trend start to fade away is certainly a welcome trend to me. This case will have some RGB in the front, and we'll have RGB on the block. And that should be about it. Oh, the RAM, I think, has RGB on it as well. So RGB on RAM I don't care about. There's no cable management involved in that. And it's not bright and gaudy. So for me personally, you know, don't take it too extreme when I'm saying goodbye, good riddance to RGB. When is it starting to fade out? Everything's got limits. You know what I mean? Like if the trend was putting fans in every hole in the case, it reaches a point of diminishing returns where it just starts to get ridiculous. So if you're into ridiculous and you can afford ridiculous, I'm not telling you not to. Where I'm frustrated as a builder are the number of requests over the last couple of years I've gotten for this stuff from people who then want to underpay for it. In other words, they want $2,000 worth of components, but they have a $1,000 budget. And that's really frustrating, because a $1,000 budget will get you a really good machine if you take all the nonsense away from it. And so this has created very long conversations with some clientele to sort of get them adjusted and say, you know, how badly do you want it? This is what it costs. I can't make it any cheaper. You know, these are the costs. And then on top of that, you're adding a bunch of labor. Then you've got all the maintenance to deal with. So is that really what you want to spend extra money you don't have to have stuff you don't need, simply because you saw a video commercial, probably, even if it was labeled a review, was probably just a commercial for something, and it influenced you. That's why they call us creators influencers. Now my goal here is to influence you to make your own decisions, right? To give you an idea of what to expect price-wise, what it's like to work on it from my perspective. You take that information, you process that to your own values, and it'll help you make a better decision for meeting whatever your expectations are. So while I do have products I do like here, such as a Cronus, I wouldn't shove it down anybody's throat. I'll tell you why I like it, why I use it, and I'll get you guys a discount on it, just to save you some money. That's it. That's my whole agenda. So as long as we have the support of the community, you can rest assured there is no corporation controlling my words, telling what I'm allowed to say or what I'm not allowed to say. My channel, my freedom. You're my audience. This is our community. And together, we'll keep it that way. So I would love to see more channels like mine on YouTube for obvious reasons. But on the other hand, if there were a lot of channels like mine, I wouldn't feel the need to do mine anymore. If I see a gap that needs to be filled, I won't fill that gap. So again, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold here, so I apologize. My voice is a little rough, and I'm having to constantly clear my throat here. But it was this or just not do the show today, and I try and stay as dedicated as humanly possible to at least my Monday, Friday schedule, no matter what. And I think we've only missed one in 3 or 4 years. I intend to keep it that way. So anyway, scroll back a little bit. Mecha Cameron saying hello. Kevin Lanthier says hello. There's Nick Caffrey. Frank Jimmy says hello. Donovan Sten contributes 35 ZAR. 35 ZAR. I don't know what currency that is. That is a South African rand. So I've heard that term before, ZAR, but for some reason I forgot that was the South African rand. So obviously we have a viewer from South Africa watching. That's awesome. We are live worldwide, and welcome in from wherever you are on the planet. Hop into the chat, say hello. We have the nicest, kindest chat room of this size I think you will find anywhere on the internet. We'd love for you to be a part of it. Rick Lake says hello. There's more Taunt joining us, along with Mark Leibowitz, who runs a computer repair facility outside of Chicago. Chris Johnson says hello. Doman 2000. Our friend Dave Stetzel joins us and says hello. White Sox Tom saying hello. There's Steve Dodd. Mark Baggett renews his membership. He's now been a member 33 months. He says hello, Carrie and chat. Happy Friday. Hope everyone is doing well. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for renewing your membership. Good to see you. Colin Hunt joins us from London. Good to see you, Colin. Thanks for hanging out with us. Colin's been a member over 2 years. Gary Wall with $2.79 Canadian in Super Chat says hello from Toronto, Canada. I guess he was referencing Mitch when he called it Torontoto. Maybe we'll see Mitch pop in here and give us a dad joke before we end the show today. Chris Garrett joins us and says hello. There's Terrell Cockerham saying hello. Jack says this case should be very quiet and move a lot of air. Badger says hello from the UK. We got a full house today. I never quite know how things are going to turn out when we go a little off the normal schedule. We normally start at 1 o'clock p.m. Phoenix time. We started at 3 o'clock Phoenix time, 2 hours later than normal. And so, but you know, my choice was just not do the show or do it later. And yeah, I'm very impressed with the turnout. This is fantastic. Thanks for showing up. Thang1 says hello. We got more people joining us. I can't even keep up. Shamim Kejviras in stealth mode and Bernie Clement all say hello. Welcome in. So with that out of the way, again, I have no sort of preconceptions about the case. This looks like a pretty standard, ordinary, full-size tower case. It looks like, for some reason, which I don't understand, they put glass on the back of it here. I have no idea why they would do that, because it certainly adds to the bottom line, the cost of the case. There's nothing to see back here, and that piece of glass is much, much heavier than just a piece of metal that normally would be a panel that would go on there. So that's a little bit disappointing that they went with glass. Again, it's adding weight, it's adding some fragility, even though it's tempered glass. And it appears there's no thumb screws. It looks like it's a straight edge screw here that's going to require a flat blade screwdriver. Normally I'm used to working on cases that you don't need any tools to open. Normally, when I work on a case this size, you would not have glass on both sides unless there was something to see. Now what's interesting is that screw obviously does not come all the way out. It only turns, looks like a quarter turn. So right now it's horizontal and I make it vertical, turning it in a counterclockwise direction. And it looks like that's all there is. So I don't know why that requires a screwdriver and why they couldn't have used a thumb screw, other than maybe they're thinking they didn't want it to stick out, you snag on anything. Still feel like a push button, something would have been a better design. And then that's the first side panel. Now, when you order a brand new case, there's almost always going to be a plastic film covering both sides of anything glass. And if it's on the outside of the case, so this case has a lot of glass, I'm realizing now. We've got glass up top, we've got glass, well, that's glass or plastic back here. All of this that's designed to catch your eye is going to be protected in shipping with a plastic film to keep it from getting scratched up. Now, most people will wait till their build's complete to take that plastic off. So for this piece, we'll procrastinate. We'll take the plastic off of this later, because there is a lot of plastic film with all of the glass and shiny surfaces on this case. So there's a top piece of glass up here. Again, I'm not sure why the top would be glass. When the top is glass, anything that's glass, it's not breathable, right? It doesn't have a way for air to get in, like a fish tank. So in order for the case to get air, you'll see the ventilation is below the glass or along the sides of the glass. In this case, I think they've given us both a mesh front and guess what? More glass. So I'm not quite sure why there's so much glass. I definitely didn't order it knowing I was getting a case that was mostly a greenhouse. But I'm not upset about it. I'm just a little surprised. There's a lot of expense that goes into having to cut all these custom pieces of glass for this specific case. That's the only thing it'll ever fit on. We've got some plastic right up here, which you can see is bubbling up, and it looks terrible. Sometimes I see people build computers and they don't take the plastic off of it. And this is what their computer looks like when they're done. And they think, oh, I'm keeping the surface from getting dusty and scratched up. It looks terrible. What's the point? The good news is, when they go to sell that computer to somebody in the future, whenever they decide to upgrade or replace it years from now, the person who buys it will be able to take that plastic off, and they'll be able to enjoy a shiny brand new front cover that's never been scratched up. Well, the original owner suffered with it looking like crap because they wanted to keep it nice for the next person, I guess. So this one's a little difficult to remove. Let me get my glasses on. There's plastic all over this, plastic film. We've got a piece here. That just goes right around the edges where it's shiny, right? Where any sort of scratching would stand out and could be a cause for returning a big heavy case. That would obviously be very expensive to return ship. So the manufacturers take these precautions to avoid a case being sent back for such a silly reason. It's got a scratch on it, you know? So for that reason, anything that's a shiny surface or glass, a lot of times the logos, they'll have a piece of plastic covering their logo because they don't want their logo scratched. It does look like the whole top comes off here. As I'm bringing this around, what do we have here? Does this open? There's a nice, I will say, all the cables hiding behind this certainly is going to make this look better from the glass on the other side, right? Because all your cables will be behind here. You've got a cover here and a cover here. But you would not need these covers if there wasn't glass on this side. So not only are you paying extra for the glass plus the added weight, but you're also paying extra for these covers that ordinarily you'd never see. So it's starting to make sense to me why CoolerMaster isn't making this case anymore, at least not here in the US, because it doesn't make any sense. Most people would never see this side, glass or otherwise, because most of us want this side showing, the side with all the parts in the RGB, and usually people have it against a wall. But even if it were on a desk, you'd still have this other side facing away from you. So you can't usually see both sides at the same time. And there's going to be one side of the case you're going to see 95, 98% of your day. So spending time making the other side visible, see-through, and hiding the cables, who's that for? But regardless, it is what it is. It's not a big deal. It's just doesn't make sense to me. I noticed some more plastic here. And I noticed a thumb screw back here. So I'm guessing if we take this thumb screw out, that this whole lid will come off. Let's find out. Now, I don't know if this is a captive screw that stays in, or if I have to completely remove it. I'm not sure. Nope, that whole screw comes out. You can tell if they're captive because they'll have a little shoulder on them or an unthreaded area between the head of the screw and the end of the screw. Be like an empty spot with no threads. That's the part where the screw's supposed to stay in the hole and move around. That's what we call being captive. That way you don't lose the screws. That was not captive, so it does have to come all the way out. Now this should just lift up and out. Remember, I'm just figuring this out as I go. I'm not looking at any documentation. I've never seen it before. I haven't really watched any videos on this. So, and if I did, I don't remember anything about it. So, I watch a lot of videos. I don't want to tell you I didn't. I can't remember anymore. Now, this part is a little concerning. I'm not sure how that lifts off. We just go straight up like a hinge. Yeah, so it does have to go in on an angle and then fold down because of the lip that's on it. And that's the glass there, and that's held in with screws on this side. This doesn't weigh too much, but like I said, anytime we add that glass, we're adding weight. We can take this piece of glass off as well, quarter turn. There it is. And we'll set that one down. We've got a GPU support bracket right here that can come out if you're not using a GPU. That raises and lowers, and it's there to help prevent your GPU from sagging. It's a nice built-in option. And this whole piece right here, that's designed to run your cables from your motherboard to the back of the board and hide as much of the cables as possible, right? Through these grommets here, and this piece here. With regards to where we're going to put our radiator, we have a big 360 millimeter radiator, and it looks like the only place we're able to put that is on top. What's interesting about the build is a lot of times we put our radiators in under the case, inside. It looks like on this build, we could do the opposite. I'm trying to think about how I want to approach this because we have a number of different options. We can install the radiator, it appears, now that I'm looking at it, in the traditional way. Fans attached to the radiator, radiator attaches to the top of the case. We've done that dozens of times. Another way to do that would be to put the radiator on top, put the fans down below, and let the fans attach and sandwich the radiator onto the case. Use half as many screws, because now we're only screwing in one side of the radiator. Or we could reverse that. Oh, we can't put the radiator on top of the case because we'd have nowhere to run the hoses. So scratch that idea. Flip it the other way around. Put the radiator down here, put the fans on top so you can see the RGB on those three fans on the radiator through the glass top. Because remember, it's going to draw air in from the sides. That's an interesting idea. And what that will be doing is pulling air in from the top and pushing it down into the case. Not the best idea to blow the hot air of the radiator into your case, but you also have these fans up front, and they're going to draw air from the front with this fan in the back drawing air out this way. So the minute we put fans up on top, we're starting to interrupt that airflow. Smooth airflow, all moving one way, is ideal. That's the best. It's not the only way, but it's the best way. When we deal with a radiator and we want to keep the airflow moving the same way, then the option would be to take these two fans out, put the 360 millimeter radiator right up in here. And in that way, we keep our fan directions the same. We're also reducing the number of fans because the radiator's got 3 fans plus the rear exhaust fan on the case. We're adding 2 additional fans to the front. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's a personal preference to the individual builder. And I'm on the fence about which way I want this. Certainly happy to listen to your feedback and your ideas in the chat room. Notice we've got a nice power supply shroud here that's going to cover all our cabling. You'll see sometimes cases have a big glass window. And when they do, then you can see the power supply in the cables unless they put a shroud around it. A lot of other cases, like from NZXT, the window only goes down this far. It won't go any further. Then you don't need the shroud. It's just there for looks. This does complicate sometimes cabling things. So when you're buying your case, you've got to decide how important that aesthetic is and how heavy the case is going to be if it's using full sheets of glass on both sides versus, again, what comes to mind is like an NZXT H5 where the glass only comes down to here. So it's less glass, it's lighter weight, and you don't need this. It's not going to see anything under here. But it's also personal design preference. Maybe you want to see an entire sheet of glass, and maybe you like washing windows. I don't know, but there's a Windows joke in there somewhere. Let's see what you guys have to say about what my thoughts are so far and what your thoughts are with what we're evaluating here. Yeah, I had no idea the details of the case until I got into it. And as I mentioned, we do have some plastic up here. Right. You know, they don't give us any pull tabs to get this plastic off. Sometimes there's a little tab you can pull up on to make the removal of the plastic film easier. And on this one, I guess you just need fingernails, which I barely have any. Grab an edge and just peel that right off of there. If you leave it on, trust me, you'll notice it later. You'll say, oh, why is that all muted? And sometimes you'll see little air bubbles or big air gaps in there, and it makes your case look horrible. And obviously, you wouldn't be building in a case like this if you didn't care how it looks, because that's the primary seller of this case. It's form over function in many cases. I'm trying to find a balance of form and function. Function being my priority, of course. However, yeah, I don't know for sure that they put form over function, but they certainly did on the Cougar case that we ended up pulling the parts out of for this build, requiring this. If the Cougar build had gone the way I expected it to, we would not be even looking at this case today. It's not often that I have a computer where things feel crowded unless it's like a mini ITX. It's a pretty unusual situation to be in for me. Now this whole top tray comes out, and I'm going to look here in the chat. I haven't forgotten. I'm just noticing some things that I want to take care of while I'm paying attention. Those are just standard, ordinary, everyday computer hex head screws. Now I like that this comes out, because what that tells me is they've given some design, some thought to the design of the person building the computer, that you can attach a radiator and everything outside of the case versus working in that confined space, which we traditionally do. So once in a while, like the Asus the Creator case that we used, was very, very user-friendly for getting that radiator installed. One of the easiest. Then, of course, you've got the radiator manufacturer, the all-in-one cooler manufacturer. Some of them are more easy to install than others when it comes to attaching the water block onto the motherboard. And if you get a combination of a really good, easy-to-use all-in-one radiator with a good, easy-to-use case, the build process is so much more enjoyable and satisfying. So that is the top piece there that's going to hold, well, potentially will hold our radiator if we do want to put the radiator up here. Either that, or we can take this whole front panel off, which I'm guessing, by the looks of it, just held in with clips, which is surprising because everything is pretty well secured in this case with screws. If I reach inside, I should see, no, I don't see them. Well, I see clips on this side of the case. You can see that starts to wiggle free. However, the clips that are holding this, what we call the front bezel, they're back behind this cable management tray here, which I guess I have to remove. And it looks like 1, 2 screws. Again, I'm going to get to the chat room. Seeing things catching my eye, and I just want to verify that I'm at least heading in the right direction, or at least I hope I am, when deciding where I want to put that radiator. So this, you can see, opens and closes like a door, and it probably Does it lift up? Yeah, it just lifts up and out, and it's got these little hooks that act as hinges. That's a really good design, but again, if we didn't have a big piece of glass, we wouldn't see this, we wouldn't need it. Now I should be able to reach in here and find those clips. Maybe. Maybe not. Yep. They're definitely not as obvious on this side of the case, but I am able to, you know, wherever it is on the other side, it's on the same height level. So I have an idea of where they should be, and I can just feel for it. There we go. And with that, this whole front bezel should just come right off. Now, as you can imagine, and picture this in your head, and the reason why I wanted to do this is that when we're deciding where to put this 360 millimeter radiator with the 3 fans, do you think that that would look better if we took these fans out and put the radiator and fans here? Or again, we would put the radiator on the inside because we would have no other way to run the hoses, right? So we put the radiator on the inside, attach the 3 fans on the outside, which again sandwiches the radiator onto the case, then put the front bezel back on, and then we have the 3 RGB fans instead of these 2 big ones. Or do we leave these 2 big ones with their RGB, put the radiator, sandwich it on here, and put it with the fans down below, which you're never going to see it unless you look up at it, or put the fans on top, which is going to blow the air down through the radiator and into the case, but with that glass top, you're going to see those fans, and they're going to draw air in from the sides. It's nice to have choices and options, and CoolerMaster has certainly given us more than what we would typically get on a regular case. These are good decisions to have to make, because in most cases, most computer cases, they're going to say, here's where you can put your radiator, and that's it. You know, if it's on top, it's on top. What I don't like about the radiator on top is I like to put stuff on top of the computer. And when I do that, on every computer I've ever done, except for this one, it blocks the airflow, whether it's incoming air or outgoing air, input or exhaust, placing boxes or paperwork on top of the case, just something I do. But this case design is such that because it's glass on top, I can still stack all kinds of crap on top of the case, or so can my customer, and not worry about airflow because it's coming in on or exhausting out the sides, depending on how we orient the fans. So that's not a deterrent from plugging it in up top. Okay, so with that, now let me go in the chat and see what you guys have to say. Hey, our friend Jack joins us from Texas, says hello. Welcome in, John Wilson. We call him Jack. Wow, there's a lot of conversation going on in here. Let me try and catch up. I see my friend Ron Hilliard just joined us. Ron's known me for going on over 40 years now. Still comes back for more. Very lucky to have good friends. You can tell you're good friends by the ones who stand the test of time. I have a dislike of the smell of onions, and it's okay if it's not too strong. And Chef Mara has decided to make something called onion chips, where you take an onion and you slice it really thin, So you have a whole onion, right? And you slice it. You have all the rings. Normally you'd separate the rings out. You could batter them and make onion rings. I like onion rings. She wants to eat healthier, and was inspired by a recipe she saw online where she's taking these slices of onion and then, well, the original recipe was you just put some Parmesan cheese, shredded Parmesan cheese onto like a baking sheet, put your slices of onion on top of that in one layer, and then sprinkle them with some seasoning and bake that in the oven until they're crispy like chips. And apparently that was a good, successful experiment for her that she had to go and make some more. So yesterday the house smelled like onions. Now today the house smells like onions, but she's very happy because apparently it's very delicious. And she likes everything burned, so she made sure to make these extra crispy. I guess it's worth the smile on her face for the house to smell of onions for the next 24 hours. Try and keep the windows open.
Hey, you're the one that encourages me to continue my cooking adventures.
No, I'm glad you found something.
It's your fault.
That's why I thought I'd share it with the audience. They might want to try it. It's cheap. How much is an onion?
It's delicious. So a lot of the recipes that you'll find will tell you to like brush avocado oil or some kind of oil, like a neutral oil on top of it.
Keep it from burning. Yeah.
And then to put it on cheese. Don't do that. Reason is because you want the onions to dry out, because it's kind of like, you know, like onion rings, right, that are battered. Well, you don't want to batter these, so, and you want the onion to dry out.
Yeah, it's supposed to be an onion chip.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if you dab it with oil, they don't dry out very well, unless you put it, I would assume.
But not everybody likes everything charcoal.
I'm not saying to burn them. But put them in. So I put them in at a high temperature on purpose because I was trying to get the burn. But if you want to dry them out properly, either do it in like an air fryer at a low temperature for a very long period of time, or in your oven at a very low temperature for a very long period of time. You could even probably do it in a refrigerator, although you won't really get them brown. But they're wonderful, they're delicious, they're low carb, low calorie, they're really, really good for you. From a diabetic perspective, there's almost no impact at all. And I say almost, I mean there's a tiny bit of an impact that goes away in like 2 hours.
Well, there's an impact in the smell of the house for the next day.
So that's the other thing is Carrie does not like the smell of onions at all.
I'm having a hard time even breathing, smelling.
And I feel bad,
and I smell
because you're just getting over this whatever cold that you had. So my apologies.
No, I'm glad you like it. And you know what?
I do.
People out there watching might want to try that recipe out. It's
easy.
easy.
You should try this recipe. If you're looking for details, I have a recipe written down. Reach out to me and I'll send it to you. So yeah, it was good though. Definitely.
I'm glad you liked it.
Thank you.
And unlike a lot of other health food, it was not expensive.
No, it was cheap. Yeah. Buying an onion is cheap.
There's a price to be paid though. It's just not with money. All right. Donovan says, Carrie, always enjoy watching your content, and I've learned a lot from your videos. Well, thank you, Donovan. We're happy to have you here. We cannot have enough like-minded and kind individuals in our community. Love to see it grow. Jack says, I guess my donation didn't go through. Did I miss it, Jack? I might have missed it. Let me check my phone, because I'm not quite sure how you contributed. I always feel bad if somebody contributes and I miss it. No, I don't see anything. Oh, I see Chris Johnson submitted an Amazon gift card for $25. He says, hello, Carrie and Mara. Hope you're both having a great day. Well, thank you, Chris Johnson. I don't see anything from you, Jack, but there's also, I have a super chat history. If I missed them, I can look at. Should be able to. Let me just pull that up. Yeah, Nick Caffrey renewed his membership, now a member for 14 months, and also contributed 10 euro. Is that euro or pounds? 10 euro in the chat room. Thank you, Nick. Stealth Mode renewed their membership. Oh, there's Jack. So Jack's been with us as a member over 24 months. He contributed $25 in Super Chat. He says, hello, everyone from an almost dried out Texas. Thank you, Jack. There it is. And I also missed our contribution from Ian Gooch, 10 pounds. And he says, hello to everybody from a chilly London where it's 40 degrees Fahrenheit and falling. It looks like I missed another one. Robert Jones contributed $20. This is for today. This is for today being a good day. Thank you, Robert. Peter in the Netherlands with another contribution, €2. Craig Wilson joins us as a member. And I think I'm caught up. Yeah, sometimes I miss them. You guys got to make me aware. Otherwise, I don't know what I missed. So thank you, Jack. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. Mark Gaines says he just received his CORSAIR 2500X case today, and he's looking forward to building in it with a 10-pound super chat. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, let us know how the build goes. The 2500X is that little white aquarium case we worked on Friday, a week ago. I was just doing the cable management on it today. I was finally feeling well enough. And I ended up having to unplug all the cables, get them all straight, and then start plugging them back in one at a time, doing each cable management single, so that way I don't get any of the weaving. I was trying to build it in such a way that I wouldn't have to go back and unplug it, unplug all the cables. I was starting to get frustrated with all the fans and the RGB. So anyway, I just unplugged everything. Take all the cables and get them all straight coming out the back of the case, and then start with the cables that are going to be closest to the motherboard tray, like your power cable, your front port umbilicals. Get all those done, at least in my opinion, and then do the fans and the RGB, all those multiple little power cables that plug into each other. It gets kind of messy. And then get those all plugged in together as straight as you can get them, and then cable management once they're all plugged in. And then it'll be done. You'd think with a case that has all the cabling hidden, the cable management would be easier, but in some ways it's a lot more complicated because of all the additional cables required for the fans and RGB. Now, granted, when you put the back cover on, no one's going to see it anyway. But it isn't just about the visuals. It's also about being able to get in there and work on it. So if I need to work, upgrade, repair, do anything like that, having the cables segmented away into separate bundles, if you will. This is the front port cables. These are the power cables. These are the fan and RGB cables. Makes it much faster to get in and out for any repair. If you open up a customer's computer, they don't do any computer cable management when they build their own PCs. And I've demonstrated how frustrating that is to untangle my way through the mess, but it's what I'm paid for. But when I put it back, I always consider whoever's going to work on this next won't have as difficult of a time trying to figure out what's going on when all the cables are put back the way they should have been. And I do that as just part of my service because I might be the next guy who works on it. So anyway, it's kind of self-fulfilling there. David Santiago joins us and says hello. Mark Leibowitz said the Windy City is actually windy today. That's not unusual. Still trying to get caught up, so bear with me here for a second. Mark Leibowitz said, you are the anti-influencer. That's your superpower. Well, here's the thing. Sometimes what you set out to do has the opposite effect. So if I'm there saying, don't do this, a bunch of people are going to do it. Or if I'm sitting there saying, look, I'm not selling you anything, I'll end up, a bunch of people are going to say, hey, I bought one of those. Okay. Like I don't have, I guess the difference is I'm not telling you what to buy or what not to buy. If I'm aware of a deal, I'm going to make you aware of it, but not because there's necessarily anything in it for me. other than the value I get from you guys, that you can trust the information I give you. If I think there's a good deal on something, it doesn't matter if there's anything in it for me. What's in it for me is that you guys appreciate it. Whether or not you take advantage of the deal, you were made aware of it, which you otherwise may not have known about. The Western Digital 8 terabyte drive. I talked about that on Black Friday. It was $579 on Black Friday. And this is just to give you an example. If you go to Amazon right now and look up that same exact Western Digital SN850X 8 terabyte NVMe Gen 4 drive. Okay, this is a large capacity fast drive. And you look at the current price. It's in here somewhere. Let's see if I can find it. I was telling you guys at Black Friday, I said when the price drops below $550, even though I don't need one, that's such a good price, I might just buy it. And I've been talking myself out of it. The holidays came and went. The $579 price went away. It jumped up to $800. Then it fell back down to around $600. Now it's back to $579 without the heatsink. If you see it with the heatsink, it's more money. It's like $630. Somewhere around here, there should be a version, unless they sold out of it. Anyway, yesterday it was another $40 off. It was $539. I don't know why. I don't know if somebody made a mistake. But at this point, I've convinced myself I don't need it. I was so tempted, but it's a lot of money. It's still a lot of money, but it's a great deal for a fast name brand 8 terabyte drive. And I just didn't have time to make you guys aware of it. But if it did it once, it'll likely do it again. So keep an eye out. What you can do is add the Western Digital 8 terabyte drive to your cart and then hit the Save It for Later button. Then visit Amazon daily and look in your cart and then scroll down where it'll have all the items you're saving for later. It'll show you the current price. And that's how you can be aware when these specials, that's how I find out about it a lot of times. I'm just looking at items I'm genuinely interested in, and I'm watching the prices. And it's fascinating to see the habit of the prices not really changing with regards to holiday specials. That you could get these deals all year, and in this case, an even better deal than what was offered during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. You know, by a good $40 or $50 worth of savings, which to me is significant. I'm not finding the link, so I don't know if they've sold out of it, but it's not uncommon for Amazon to sell out of these drives when they're at $579, you know, for the 8 terabyte Western Digital Gen 4 fast drive. But it's also not uncommon for them to get them right back in stock tomorrow. So it's another reason to keep it in your cart, save it for later. There's a little button that says save for later, so it moves it. You're not going to purchase it accidentally. It moves it beside the cart, not in the cart. And then if you see a deal on it and you want to buy it, you just hit the add to cart button. You don't have to go manually searching for it every time. So anyway, when I find deals like that that I think are good deals, I want to tell you about them. And I think my reward for that is that you guys appreciate it and you keep coming back. So I would rather, you know, play the long game than just try and get a bunch of money twisting people's arms that might feel misled or pressured and then not want to watch anymore. That might appear to work well at first, but over time, it's not a sustainable business model. Keep people coming back. Don't pressure them. Let them know. Let them make up their own mind. And if that makes me an anti-influencer, well, at the same time, you can see how it works the other way too, where I become the ultra influencer because I'm not adding all that sales pressure. I will pressure people, you know, to support the channel, but that's self-serving, right? And we appreciate it. Randy Roblowski says hello. NCG says, at least you're honest. Yeah, unfortunately, the honest people aren't usually the rich people. There's exceptions, but that's, at least here in America, you know, some people sleep better at night on a pillow made of money. I'm not one of those people. Bill says, Carrie, you need some rest. Well, that's why there wasn't a show earlier this week. Trying not to work too hard. Telling me to rest is like telling a dog not to bark. There's so much to do. Shamim Kajveras renews membership, now a member for 21 months. He says, another month, close to 2 years as a member. It's always so relaxing to learn new stuff in computer technology, PC building, routers, mini PCs, etc. Thank you, Carrie, and my regards to the community. Shamim, thank you. Shamim joins us from Sweden, right? I love that we have viewers all over the world watching us live, and that you guys are friends with each other, regardless of where you're from or what your culture is, that we all share this common passion, this common interest. We can all come together and create a community that otherwise wouldn't exist without us. So thank you so much for being a part of it and for supporting the channel. David Graham also renews his membership, now a member for 18 months. Wants to know where Mitch is. We're keeping Mitch a safe distance away so he doesn't catch my cold, but probably in 2 weeks, I think Mitch will be back in town, and we'll continue what we were going to do today. Will just be postponed until Mitch is back from his trip. I should be long over my cold by then, I hope. And we don't want to make Mitch sick before he's doing all this traveling. That would be miserable, and I would feel terrible. James Steinbreaker says, hello. Welcome in, James. Barry Klein said, it's bad enough I get equipment envy watching this channel. Now I'm getting hungry as well. Well, don't eat the equipment. Chris Garrett said he likes onions, but they don't like him. What was the name of that song? Remember Dr. Demento, and he played a song called I'd Love to Bite an Onion If It Wouldn't Bite Back. John Williams said, that's not a blooming onion, right? Blooming onions are battered and fried, and it's the battering and the frying that makes them unhealthy. So Mara's very much on a healthier diet. And in this way, it's also keeping it vegan, right? She doesn't put cheese on it. And simple to make. It's good for you, and according to Mara, delicious. Frank Jimmy says he prefers panko breading onion rings over beer batter. Yeah, panko is a breading I can't stand personally. I'll take a tempura batter any day, a nice thin batter so you can still taste some onion ring. Panko breading for me is crumbly, and it's too thick. And I mean, unless you got a really thick onion ring in there. I mean, I won't turn it away if it's offered, but I prefer like a beer battered tempura on anything, fried mushrooms, anything breaded and fried, chicken tenders, chicken nuggets. Yeah, but Mara won't eat any of that. She'll do like broiled. Acrona says it sounds like a good start for a cooking video series spin-off. There might be something there. Might be something there. Mara's working on a healthy cookbook. She's been working on that for a couple of months now. She's getting close to having a final product. So I don't know how well it's going to succeed or not, but these are our own recipes. They're healthy. They're great for diabetics, for people that are keto, people that want to be low carb, sugar-free, and they don't want to give up flavor, right? That you think that you got to eat something that's healthy, like it's a chore or a punishment, instead of wanting to eat it because it's delicious. So Mara's got a lifetime of these recipes, thousands. And I said, you got to take the best of the recipes you have. You need to publish this. This is a community service. There's so many people who feel like it has to taste healthy to be healthy. And if people knew what you knew, they wouldn't feel it was a chore to eat healthy. So I guess I was convincing, and she got to work, and she's still working on it, but she's very close to the finish line, and we'll give you guys more information about that when it's done. NCG contributes $5 Canadian. says corporate America is lying and stepping on people to get rich. Carry America is keeping it real, even if it doesn't make him Elon Musk. You know what? I'd prefer to stay under the radar, because in the world we live in today, it doesn't matter what you do nice for people. There's a bunch of people who think you're the devil. If Mr. Beast goes out and he drills a bunch of wells for people that don't have any water in villages, he's a terrible person for making the government look incapable and inept. If he's restoring vision to people with cataracts on a $100 surgery that he's doing, helping 1,000 people see again, there's always some side or facet of that where someone will demonize it. So I am glad it doesn't let him or dissuade him from doing what he feels is right. But it seems like an unjust world where somebody who had no benefit or loss because of what somebody else did is just sitting on the sidelines watching and doing nothing, but can't keep their mouth shut with a negative attitude, when they simply, without having any power, influence, or authority, your opinion is worthless. Like Joe Schmo doesn't even introduce himself or explain why his opinion matters, but he wants you to know what he thinks. And the internet is just filled with that. And for no good justifiable reason, other than clearly Joe Schmo doesn't have a job, has a lot of time, and instead of using that to build up and be supportive, he's using it to tear down complete strangers and discourage or disparage those from doing good. So wherever the side of the fence you are on that kind of stuff, I would likely not want to be on the fence at all, right? Just stay low, under the radar, get just popular enough, and keep it small, keep it quiet. Because that's the world we live in now, which is, unavoidable. You're going to reach that level of success, be ready for it, it's coming. So I was looking for some advice from you guys, and I haven't seen any. Doesn't mean it wasn't there, I haven't seen it. Where do you think this radiator should go? Should we be putting the radiator front-wise here? Take these two fans out, put 3 fans on the front. Or should we just go all to top with over the top with RGB? Leave these fans here, which are RGB. Place the radiator on top. And if we place the radiator on top, do we put the fans on top so we can see the RGB through the glass? Or do we put the fans down below as traditional so we're blowing hot air out of the case? So you've got to consider, if we turn the fans around, so let's say we put the fans on top. You go, well, Carrie, why don't you just turn the fans around so they don't blow air down into the case, but rather pull air out? Well, because then you won't see the RGB. The RGB shines against the blades. The blades are going to be facing the direction of the airflow. So if the airflow, whatever side of the fan the airflow is coming out of, that's the side that the RGB is most visible. If you turn the fan around the other way, you're looking at the RGB from backstage, if you will, from behind the curtain. It's there, but it's definitely not having the impact it's supposed to. And then the other solution would be to buy reverse bladed fans where the blades are turned the opposite way, so the fans still spin the same direction, but move the air the other way. That increases our expense now. We already have fans, they already work, they're already RGB, why don't we use what we have? So if we put the fans on top, given all that, it's going to be pushing air down into the case. We put the fans on the bottom, it'll be pushing air out of the case, exhausting air out. But we also won't see the fans as well. We're back to not being able to really see the RGB. If we put the fans up front, then we have these 2 big fans that we're just going to a bucket somewhere for some future build someday that were part of what we paid for. But on the other hand, it might look better. This is the joy of being a builder, is you get to make these executive decisions, right, that determine how your build is going to be designed and laid out. And no answers are wrong. It's just personal preference. And I'm just measuring your personal preference overall, what the audience has in mind today. What your thoughts are. I'm very curious. I may not agree with you, but I'm still very curious. K Viper says, only a 2 degrees Celsius difference. Yeah, in fan direction, probably true. Yeah, I'm not, you notice I didn't even talk about temps because the obsession with temperatures on the internet is insanity. It doesn't happen in reality, in real world. People aren't calling me because their computer's overheating. It's once in a while, once every 2-3 years, I'll get that call. But you know what keeps me in business? Real computer problems, not the ones people invented because they watched a video. Essentially, I don't care about the cooling on this. I know the water block is attached to the CPU, and so long as the fans on the radiator turn, whether they're blowing air in or out, it's not an issue. It'll work equally well either way. It's more of a visual issue. Frank Jimmy says leave the front fans and put the radiator up top. We got 1 vote for up top. Hey, there's Frankie B, a good friend of the channel. Frankie joins us from New York. Frankie thinks we should put the radiator in the front. 55 Stang Dude says, I like the big old front fans. Jonathan says radiator on top, so he's agreeing, leave the front fans on. Robert Halter says, put the radiator behind the big fans at the front and put the RGB radiator fan, on top of the case. That never even occurred to me. I wonder how well that would work from a fan perspective. Here's what you got to keep in mind. I want you to think this through. The radiator is about so wide. In the center of the fan doesn't spin. See how big these fans are? So they're going to have a giant spindle. And that spindle, there's no air going through that. So essentially, your air is going to be coming out around the outside of the spindle towards the edge of the blades. So you have, from these front fans, you have a tunnel of no air right out the middle, which is the heart of our radiator. And given the radiator is only this wide, if you're going to cover up that radiator from getting any airflow this big around twice, that is probably not going to work too well for cooling. It's a neat idea. I like the idea, but the execution, well, I wasn't worried about heat before. That would scare me because too much of the radiator will be starved for air by these giant spindles. And too much of the air will be hitting the outside of the radiator because of how big these fans are and how much smaller the radiator is. Lortant says, I'd put the radiator on top. David Grant says, replace the gaudy front fans. Scott says, fans on top. The card says, go the normal way, whatever that means. Kevin Lanthier says, do the radiator on top. A lot of people want the radiator on top. Jack says, I'd do the top and keep the 200mm fans up front. Frank Jimmy said, someone once showed me a custom photo album with recipes, a family photo album cookbook. Such a terrific family memento, or memento for family members. Yeah, that's a neat idea. Mortant said, I just want to see those big fans light up. I'd go with the radiator on the top with the auditor fans inside the case. K Viper says top. Randy Roblowski says top. Bill Sony T is saying, yeah, leave those front fans on. John saying top. Patrick wants to know if this computer will fly. Guess it depends how strong and how far you can throw it. Carlos Hernandez says, put the radiator in the front. Jack says, are the front fans airflow or static pressure fans? Honestly, I don't know and I don't care. Airflow is airflow, and whether or not they're positive or static to me is irrelevant. Nature will create the vacuum it needs to bring the air out the back the same. It'll still need to be dusted on a regular basis. There's no avoiding that. And this idea of any benefit from positive air pressure, as long as your airflow is all flowing preferably one direction from front to back or bottom to top, that's my main concern. I think that it's a big misconception on the internet with regards to positive air pressure and the effect it has on a computer case, which is almost nothing. I would encourage you to do the testing yourself. You'll still have to dust your computer out at least once a year regardless, and you'll still run into essentially the same exact cooling conditions because we are on a water block. And as a result, you know, we're secluded away from the environmental air around it. So in my experience as a technician, it's all in your imagination, and that doesn't actually provide any practical relevance in reality. But that's why I don't waste any time really talking about that stuff. Because to me, it's a waste of time. Mike Hi says hello. Alan Lindus wants to know if I can offset the radiator. Offset it where? It either goes at the front or it goes on the top, right? And then you could probably move it an inch or two up or down or side to side, depending on the width of the radiator. So there is some customization there, but you still have to be able to keep the fans blowing air through. You can't have the radiator offset away from the fans or it won't cool. You won't get the radiator covered with air, which is absolutely critical. Jack says static pressure are usually recommended for radiators. Yes, there's a lot of recommendations coming from enthusiasts online who don't actually have any thermodynamic education. And so there's a lot of false information online. And what I encourage you to do is to actually run your own testing, and you'll figure out what's truth from nonsense. A lot of people that are content creators are just simply enthusiasts. They're not necessarily professionals in an industry. And there is a difference with regards to professionals being held accountable, who are earning a living and are going to live out on the street. If everything they do is wrong, they won't be able to sustain an income or run a business. As a result, when you have a hobby and you enjoy computers and you nitpick little tech minutia stuff that in reality doesn't matter, you create a form of technochondria and anxiety. I don't say it's done with intention. It's sort of a consequence of minimalizing everything down to a point where it's basically nil. It's such a negligible point of difference as it makes no difference. And it's more about people feeling good, right? It doesn't matter what the rules of thermodynamics are. All that matters is it sounded good to you and you went with it. But if you perform your own testing, and I would challenge, if you're that passionate and you truly believe it, prove it. Prove it to yourself. Run your case with a positive pressure. Run it with static air pressure. Run your same tests and allow a 3 °C variation in testing one test to the next because of room temperature changes. That's your margin of error, margin of correction. And you'll find it makes no noticeable difference one way or the other. It's just a placebo. There are some technologies that exist where that does matter. Like if you want to send something up into the atmosphere and you need to keep it, I don't know, cool or something very delicate. This is consumer grade electronics, ladies and gentlemen. This is meant for consumers. You're not at the research and development lab at MIT testing some newfangled idea that requires extraordinary cooling that is profoundly sensitive. The stuff built for consumers is relatively simplistic and very difficult to break. So going down to that level of minutia, it's more of a feel-good thing than it is a real practical thing to be concerned about. It's created by enthusiasts, and then it's carried over almost like a disease from the people who believe this nonsense, and then they parrot it back out to others, and nobody bothers to actually test it. So I have no reason, to take sides on it. I'm just telling you, running a business, it's just not a thing. It just doesn't exist. We've run our own tests here. We've not able to establish any noticeable difference one way or the other. It does make a difference in your wallet and in your anxiety. It's not healthy. But It's not necessarily hurting anything to do it, but it's what we would call overkill, unnecessary, and impractical. But a lot of what consumers do as a hobby is impractical. That's why it's a hobby and not a job. John Paul Bacon says, put it in the front, maybe with a push-pull. RGB on top of RGB is not going to look good. Lou Jambo says, hello, Kerry from New Jersey. Great videos consistently. That almost looked like the HAFX case from CoolerMaster. I missed mine. Yeah, that's a big case. Alvin Shaver said, large fans have lots of airflow at lower RPMs. This is true. Alan Lindis wants to know if we can shift the radiator left or right. If we shift the radiator left or right, the fans cannot be shifted, only the radiator. As a result, you're going to end up with fans that are blocked. So in other words, the hole is only so big. And the minute you move the radiator over the frame of the hole, the air can't blow through the frame. You understand what I'm saying? So that whole part of the radiator will be starved of air, and that part of the radiator then won't be cooling effectively. So the whole radiator as a whole will not be operating efficiently. It might be operating good enough, but I'm not a good enough kind of guy. Like it's got to be right. David Graham contributes $5. He says, where did you catch your cold? Take it back and release it. I wish I could. I'd love to know where I got it. Especially since I don't really go anywhere. How did the cold come to me? James Steinbrecher says, put it on the top. Everybody wants it on the top, it seems like. Sir Chris Kringle says if it doesn't matter which way it cools, which it doesn't, then I'd say go with what looks best. Right, that's why I'm asking. What do you think looks best, the radiator on the top or the radiator in the front? I'm not asking about which way you think it cools best. I've already said the cooling isn't going to be an issue. So, yeah, welcome to my world. That's what I'm trying to figure out. John Paul Bacon goes non-RGB. Yeah, if we went non-RGB, this really wouldn't be an issue, would it? If this did not have RGB on it, would I keep regular non-RGB fans on the front and add fans on top? Or would I be better off putting my fans on the front and taking these two fans out? Either way, I'm still stuck with a dilemma where I still think it'll look best because we have a big piece of glass here and we have a piece of glass on top. Remember, now if this wasn't all glass, we wouldn't need the RGB. Sort of one goes hand in hand with the other. If this was a metal framed case and it wasn't a showpiece, everything was sealed up like a normal case from the 1990s and early 2000s, no one would ever see it. Then it wouldn't matter. Jack says, Kerry, I've been building PCs and selling PCs since 1997. Just offering my thoughts. No harm, no foul. No, don't. Jack, first of all, if I disagree with you, don't take it personally. I'm just explaining why from my perspective. Doesn't mean you're wrong. I want you to understand, and for the benefit of everybody else, to understand the question and the response, to explain why I have the answer. It's in no way anything that you should take personally, just rather when it comes to fans and, you know, static pressure, positive pressure, I want people to just be aware of that ongoing misinformation being presented and amplified on YouTube, which doesn't exist in reality. At least in my line of work, I've been working I'm not trying to run a competition with you at all. I've been professionally in the industry since 1991. So I've been doing this a very long time. And in that time, I'm more than happy to share with you what are the most common repair calls I get, or what I used to get versus what happens today, along with all of the difference there is in the YouTube enthusiast community to the reality that I face every day. And I like to make sure people are aware of those distinctions, because otherwise, if you're not in the business, how would you not know the difference, right? That's all. It's just there to inform, and it's not there to correct anybody or Like I said, I appreciate all of your suggestions from all of you. Even if I don't necessarily agree with them, I'll explain why, and that's it. And, you know, it's not telling anybody they're wrong, sharing a perspective and a consideration. And yeah, we're not trying to draw blood. It's all good. I appreciate your feedback, and I enjoy the interaction. Agreeing or disagreeing is not personal, is not required. Mike says, I'm new to the chat. I've been watching for a while now. I'm from Louisiana. Thanks for the welcome. Very friendly chat community as well. Yeah, I can't say enough good about our community here. We hope you'll want to stick around and be a part of it, Mike. Been watching a lot of Kitchen Nightmares with Gordon Ramsay. That's all been taking place in Louisiana. So we're getting a lot of Louisiana on the mind lately. David Graham says he doesn't like big fans, and he cannot lie. Micah Cameron says, but you paid for the fans. That's true, I did pay for the fans. However, are you the kind of person that will go to a buffet and eat as much as you possibly can, even to the detriment of your own health? Because, hey, I paid for this. Would you cause your own self-harm simply because you paid for something? So you're, I don't like other people, like a company, to dictate to me what I'm going to eat. So if I go to a fast food place and I order a combo meal, they have already predetermined my portion size, right? And they say, well, do you want a medium or a large? That's it. So regardless of what they define as a medium, doesn't mean that's a medium for me. And if I'm eating it, it doesn't taste good, I'm not finishing it. I'm not going to poison myself. It might not taste good because it's raw, because there's bacteria in it, because it was mishandled or dropped on the floor. There's something about it I don't like. Is it worth me going back and asking for them to remake it? Maybe. If I just came through the drive-thru, am I going to turn the car around? No, I'm just going to throw it away. Maybe I won't go there again. But I'm not going to make myself sick. Or if they determine that a medium, like Five Guys, gives you essentially 1.5 pounds of French fries, that's way too many French fries for one person. It's not healthy. Well, I paid for it. So what? So you should make yourself miserable? Well, I paid to make myself miserable. How about you give me $10 and I'll kick you as hard as I can in the shin? I mean, you paid for it. Or would you be okay with saying, you know what? Keep the $10, we're good. See what I'm saying? Like at some point, there's an attitude or a perspective that's much more expensive in the long run. And as a computer builder, it's not like I'm never going to have use for those fans. I've got 30, 40 computers laying around here, and Lord only knows what's coming in the door tomorrow. So those go up on a shelf, and if need be, and eventually it's bound to happen, something comes in, has a bad 200 millimeter RGB fan, I've already got one in inventory. They won't go bad. And I didn't pay full price for this case. It was a closeout deal. So I don't remember what I paid, but if I paid for it, it had to be a good price. So what I paid for it and what somebody else paid for it may also be a different perspective too. John Paul Bacon, Mr. Ramsay has Hell's Kitchen, Kitchen Nightmares, and Next Level Chef. Yeah. Scott says those 120 millimeter fans would look too small on the front. Where would you use those large fans? Well, again, we get computer cases in. If you look through the history of the channel, we've had a couple of cases come in. In fact, I think one of Mitch's cases, also a CoolerMaster case, if I'm not mistaken, from years ago, uses a 200 millimeter fan. And we didn't have any extras. We had to order one from Amazon for Mitch. All these fans will eventually fail. They'll start to make noise. Give it enough time. So anything we don't use because I'm a professional system builder and I see many more computers than most of my viewers will see in their lifetime, it makes more sense for me to hold on to stuff that I might need it again. On the other hand, if the case did not come with those fans, I wouldn't know any better. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like they added much price one way or the other. So this isn't about money. This is really about what's going to look best. This isn't about cooling. This isn't about money. This is purely putting makeup, completely unnecessary, on something that's already beautiful. And at what point do you add beauty with the makeup? And at what point do you detract from the beauty and turn into a clown because you put too much makeup on and turned it ugly? So we're focused more about the attitude of the aesthetic, and everybody's got their own idea of what beauty is or what attraction is. And when it comes to technology, I never used to build computers for how they looked on the inside. It was always a big metal case, right? You'd have maybe a floppy drive up front, maybe a CD or a DVD drive up front. Nobody saw the inside. We never had liquid cooling. We never had windowed cases. You'd have to get a Sawzall and make it yourself. Some modders did that. But that was not normal. Customers didn't call me and ask me for that stuff. This has all changed in the last 20 years, where the emphasis about computer performance, reliability, and security has gone down the toilet. I bet you I can sell a computer with RGB on it that's 4 years old for the same price as a computer with no RGB that's brand new. And the one with the RGB that's 4 years old will outsell it 10-1 because it's got the pretty lights. And the average consumer has no idea what Gen 3 is or what Gen 14 is. They don't know. All they go is, can I game on that? And you go, yes, and they'll buy it. And if they find out later that their idea of gaming and your idea of gaming isn't the same, and they bought something really old and they didn't realize it, then I guess they learned their lesson. Welcome to Facebook Marketplace and eBay, where that runs rampant. You can imagine this was never an issue for the first 20 years of my career. Just didn't even come up for discussion. I had a very different job. But I've changed with the times, and this is what people want. And now these are the scenarios that I want to bring to your attention. Because if you want to build your own computer, right, and we're talking about one for you, not one for somebody else, you get to decide this. And I'm just curious what decision you would make. Now, if I were building this for a customer, I'd have to ask the customer what they want. They're paying for it. Because we're building this for the channel, I'm asking the channel, just as I would a customer, where do you guys think it would look best? Up front or top? Has nothing to do with money. Nothing to do with cooling. What's going to look better? Luke Greenia mentions the Musitech case has a 200mm front RGB fan. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, too bad I can't mount the radiator over here, huh? No, they don't have a spot for that with this case. I see what you're saying. Although that would focus a lot of RGB just right here and then nothing in the back, right? That'd be kind of weird. It's always good to have options, though. So it does seem like most of you, probably 90% of you, think the radiator on top is the way to go. Okay. It seems a pretty consistent answer. There's a few of you who think the radiator up front would be better, but clearly the majority is radiator on top. So if we're going to put the radiator on top, the next step is figuring out putting the motherboard in, because remember, when I took the board out, I kept the radiator attached to the board. So I need to go grab the board, set it down over here. And I suppose we need to start by just simply installing the motherboard into the case. We want to make sure we have all the right standoffs. I haven't even gotten to the case hardware, the screws and such. Oh, which are going to be in this box right here. Did they give us a spare standoff? Let's see. I mean, I don't think we'll need it, but they've given us zip ties. This is a USB-C to USB 2 adapter. No, it's not USB-C, that's micro USB. What's this for? Micro USB. Where would that go? I don't know where that would go. What is this for? USB 2 to a USB micro 2.0 adapter. This is a Molex power cable to fan header. I guess if you want your fans to run full speed at all times because you like the noise and you like to bring a lot of dust and debris inside of your case, so you're going to have to dust it out more often, then this is the part you want to use. Otherwise, throw it far away. Anything that uses a Molex connector is going to be always on with no control. It's very 1990s. They put all of our screws in one bag. So we have a mixture of everything in here. There's nothing isolated. So fan screws, motherboard mounting screws, the standoff socket. There's probably some standoffs in here. Yeah, I see at least one. Hard drive mounting screws, teeny tiny thumb screws, which I don't know what they're, oh no, those are standoff. There's a lot of extra standoffs in here. Wow. What an extreme difference. We have a microfiber cloth to keep the glass clean. Yeah, there's something we never sold with computers in the 90s. And then finally we have, I'll tell you what this looks like is an ARGB header, standard ARGB, addressable RGB on this end, and then a 6-pin connector. I don't know what that goes to either. It acts like it's coming with a fan controller, right? And the USB would talk to the fan controller, and the RGB would plug in the fan controller, but I don't see a fan controller. Unless it's, you know what, maybe there's something behind here. Let's take a look. Ah, there is a fan controller. Okay. Okay. Right there. And it is a 6-pin fan header coming off of there. The reset switch is wired to the fan header. And that's likely a manual RGB override. So you can push the reset button on the front of the case, and instead of resetting your computer, it'll cycle through preset colors. On the other hand, if you have a motherboard that has an ARGB header, you would use software to have much better control over a variety of patterns beyond, you know, just pushing a button. So the reset switch, I imagine, can be removed from here and placed on the motherboard so it can function as a reset switch, or you can leave it on the fan header. That's what it appears anyway. You'll see one fan header is in use and there's a spare, and I guess that's what this wire is for over here. Is if you want to control your motherboard, your RGB through your motherboard, then you would plug this cable in. Boy, it's quite difficult to work on this fan controller because you're right up against the metal. You'd almost want to unscrew it to work on this because is not very easily accessed. Well, it's screwed down to this plate. So this is something to keep in mind. If we took these front fans out, this whole piece could come out and sit in a recycle bin. We'd have a lot less cabling to do and less to go wrong and less to maintain, because those aren't regular standard fans. Those fans need to be plugged into the controller. Then the controller would need to be plugged into the motherboard to control the ARGB. We've got the reset switch that we lose reset functionality so that it can control the RGB manually. Plus we have to add power. Something's got to power those fans. So we need a power cable coming off of the power supply to plug in here. And if your power supply does not have a spare SATA power connector, that's what the Molex adapter is for. Wow, you look how hairy the cable management just got, just to have those two front fans. Now when we add 3 more fans to the radiator, they're not going to plug into this fan controller. This is a proprietary design. We could completely rid ourselves of that, take the screws out, take the controller out, take the fans out, take the wiring out, and have a much cleaner install. But does it look uglier? There's definitely benefits to removing this because it doesn't fit the standard. Fact is, those fans should have 4-pin standard PWM fan connectors that we can plug into a standard motherboard. Along with plugging the RGB into the motherboard, we should not need a fan controller. On the other hand, as I mentioned, this case is 5 or 6 years old. So 5 or 6 years ago, this probably made sense. Today, it doesn't really make sense anymore. We cannot use this fan controller on the radiator. The radiator is more traditional. Well, I'll take it back. That radiator has a separate fan controller too, I think. These days, with a modern system, a modern motherboard, you should have more than enough fan headers. You should have ARGB directly on the motherboard, and there should be no reason to use fan headers anymore today. This is just a stopgap between the introduction of multiple RGB fans, the introduction of ARGB and other RGB standards, where ARGB has clearly become the leader and the choice of most. And also, all of that's kind of won out now. In other words, it's already kind of been decided by the marketplace. And while all that was going on, this was the solution they offered in the meantime. It's sloppy. So this USB is another cable that has to be, well, should be hooked up. So with this USB cable, the idea is that you could load some software to control your fans and your RGB, and the software is going to communicate through the USB port. So on the USB 2 port of the motherboard, this is yet another cable. Again, this is all for 2 fans, may I remind you. Now remember, this is really hard to plug in because this is not the most flexible, bendable cable in the world. This only goes in one direction. And with that mounted the way it's mounted in there, trying to squeeze this little piece in here, it just won't go in. So the only way I can reasonably get this installed, which is really a bad design, is to unscrew this, unscrew the circuit board, because CoolerMaster's given us no cable management consideration. So it's up to you on how you're going to figure out how to get that plug put in. Now that the plug's put in, which should have been done at the factory, by the way, now it doesn't want to sit back down because this cable is in the way and we have to bend it around. And even bending it fully, it's not coming forward. It's too wide. This should have been an L-shaped bracket here. This part here should be L-shaped. So this is a terrible, terrible design. Essentially, you have to force it down and then put the screws in there to lock it in. It does not want to sit in there by itself with that cable attached. I want you to think about all these cables for 2 fans. Okay, now we have plenty of room in here to run cables. There's no issue with not having enough space for it. It's, do you want to overcrowd your case for nonsense? silica gel. Ooh, 2 points. Nothing else in here. Okay, so bear in mind, when this case was introduced to the market 5 or 6 years ago, this might have been just what everybody was doing back then. I don't like the idea that at this price point, they just threw all our screws in a bag and, you know, what are screws? Which screws are for what? Who knows? It's nice when you get a case like from NZXT or other manufacturers, heck, even CORSAIR, where they separate the screws out, where they even give you that nice little plastic container, that separator. So I don't know what we've got in here, and if there's enough, maybe, I guess, figure it out. It's a puzzle. Have fun. It makes more sense to me if I want to keep these 2 fans, now that I've had a good chance to evaluate this in person rather than looking at pictures online, because they never show you the cables, right? They'll show you a big screen TV on the wall. Magically, it's wireless. I don't know how they do that. They'll show a nice computer and keyboard and mouse on a desk. No cables. I've seen bands lip syncing to music, and if you look closely, the instruments are not plugged in. There's a guy playing a keyboard that has no wires running to the keyboard. How's that getting any power? Didn't anybody think you could at least fake it? You know, put a cable in and pretend it's plugged in? So stuff like that kind of stands out to me. Now I want you to think about all the effort it's going to take to hook these fans up and run all that cable management, in addition to running the fans and cable management on the radiator. The radiator is going to plug into the motherboard, or the radiator has a controller. I can't remember which one it is, but the controllers are not compatible with one another. So these 2 fans need their own controller, and potentially that radiator, those fans need their own controller, and nobody is using the motherboard fan headers and motherboard's ARGB. So what's the point of buying a motherboard that has all that? And what's the point of paying extra for making the case sloppier and incompatible, not talking with the other hardware? So, well, that fan controller has an ARGB header, and probably the other one does. They've all agreed we'll talk through ARGB, but not with each other with regards to fan power. These fans have a 6-pin header on them. I bet you I can go on Amazon and buy 2 200mm fans made by somebody else that has a 4-pin fan connector and an ARGB fan header, and I could remove that controller altogether. In which case, I would not use these fans. I would not keep them because they have a 6-pin header on them. At least I think they do. Maybe they don't. Let's take a look here and see how these fans are hooked. Because you see, this fan controller, I think, and remember, it's only been 5 or 6 years, I think it's obsolete. And I don't necessarily believe it's needed. So what are the actual wires coming off of these fans? I see a standard ARGB plug. Standard ARGB plug. Okay, so that right there answers that problem. Now, how are they getting power? Are they going to a 6-pin connector? No, they are not. They're going to a standard 3-pin. So that's not so good. It's a 3-pin instead of a 4-pin. And that means we can't control it as well as precisely, but it's still okay. So that would be like what I would order from Amazon. A standard 200mm fan with a standard fan plug and a standard ARGB header. And we'd get that times 2. And what that means, as far as I'm concerned, and you want to talk about, well, you bought it, you should use it. You want to talk about self-punishment. Let's take this back out. And let me just show you, by using the wires that are coming off the fans and get rid of this nonsense here, just dump it. All these cables, all of the spider web of cables, including our reset switch, which we could actually use as a reset switch, all right, returns to normal. And all of this is a waste of money, is unnecessary, and is obsolete because it's all been replaced with all the connectors and controllers on the motherboards since, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, right? So this was a solution for about 2 years. After that, it wasn't a solution anymore, and they didn't have a crystal ball. They didn't know. And it's likely one of the reasons why they're closed this case out and they're not going to make it anymore. It's obsolete. Now, if you're building a system like a Gen 9 system, like an older system from 5 or more years ago, then you'd still want this. But why would you sink money into a brand new case this expensive to put old, diminished valued parts into it? So all of this, trash. There wouldn't be anything else to use it in. Now, granted, some of the adapter cables, the splitters, they can go into a drawer with adapter cables and splitters that might come up in some future need for an unrelated system that comes in for repair or some build that we're doing. But look at all the cables and work we've just removed by just simply looking at how this was prepared from the factory and questioning it. Just because it came from the factory pre-set up a certain way doesn't mean that's the best way to set it up. Now, it might have been, again, at that time. But today, we go by different standards. I'm trying to remember where I took this off. This guy here. So I guess that's got to come off anyway in order to get our power supply in there. So I'll leave it off. Okay. And then we'll have 2 extra screws. These screws were screwed into the other side of this. I guess they're not going to hurt anything if I put them back, but they're just there to hold the circuit board in. And I can't imagine you'd want to use it for anything else, but I suppose you could get some Velcro tape or something, put a 2.5-inch SSD in there if you wanted to slow the system down with more obsolete hardware. So I knew when I was buying it, it was a bit older of a case, and I thought it still looked very modern. But it's what I didn't know. It's not a deal breaker. It's just interesting. Overkill. And even this panel here, this covers the back of the CPU. And it doesn't look like anything's securing that. It looks like it'll just pop off. Let's see. What is holding that on? Something holding that on. It looks like it's just a piece of plastic that grips around the outer lip of the metal motherboard tray being folded in. I don't want to break it. There it goes. Yeah, that just pops right off. Sorry, I didn't mean to shine that light at you. Okay, so now when we go to install a cooler or back of the board is visible, all of these pieces, except for the top piece, are just decorative to cover cabling because of the glass panel, which should not be on that side to begin with. That also added to the cost of the case unnecessarily. So what I can see here from this case design and where they went wrong with it, in my opinion, and of course it's easy to say 6 years after it was made, you know, how we make it differently today. But I never would have put a glass panel. Even 6 years ago, I wouldn't have done it. And I wouldn't have added these components. They wouldn't have been needed. So right out of the gate, it was built with unnecessary overkill and over-engineered. That being said, apart from adding to the complexity, which adds to the cost of the build, right? I mean, it costs the manufacturer a certain amount of money to make these. That adds to the cost. You know, you have to mold all this plastic custom, and it's all got to be pieced together. And then it adds to the weight and the shipping cost and how you pack it, how safely it's got to be packed to prevent that glass from breaking. And how many returns are they going to get from glass breaking? You know it's happened. And that could have been theoretically cut in half by using half the amount of glass. That would have lowered the price of the case, made it less fragile, made it less heavy, cost less to ship it, less to make it, and then less for you and I to buy it. Now, given I'm fighting a bit of a cold and I wasn't quite sure if I would even get through 2 hours today, we've exceeded that right now. And I just want you to know I appreciate you hanging out with me today. And I think we'll just leave it on the bench as it is so we can pick it up maybe tomorrow or Sunday, depending on how I feel. So we can think about mounting that radiator on top or in the front. It does sound like everybody wants it on top. Not opposed to that. Now that I can see we can use those front fans without that controller, it was a little roller coaster because I assumed that's how it was initially until I found the fan controller and then realized, uh-oh, we've got a proprietary format. Then realized, oh, they're adapting it from a normal format, a regular standard format, into their proprietary. We just need to unplug and remove all that stuff. That keeps things simple, less complicated, less messy, makes the build less time-consuming, less cable ties, less cable management. And again, to each their own on that. You might enjoy that kind of thing. After you do about 4,000 or 5,000 of them, it's not, doing the cable management isn't challenging. It's oftentimes the surgeon, when they're done with the surgery, doesn't stitch up the patients. That's somebody else's job. Like, that's kind of how I feel. Like, let me get in there and do what I need to do. Anybody can come in and put some zip ties on things. So, you know, to each their own there. We can put the power supply in from the back. I see there's a frame here that comes out. Or we can also put the power supply in probably from the side. No, maybe not. There's a large lip here. You see how far down the tray goes? Probably the power supply won't fit in width-wise. It'll have to come in this way. And if we're using a modular power supply, we're going to want to attach the cables we know we're going to need first, rather than have to reach your hands down in there and try and find the plugs, which is doable. It's just easier if you can think ahead of it. And again, if you want to plug an extra cable in, it's probably faster to just take the 4 thumb screws, slide the power supply out, plug the cable in, than it would be to reach around in this narrow hole. Or don't use a modular power supply, and that solves that problem. You've got plenty of room to hide all your extra cables down here. So, you know, it's not all bad, but it's far from perfect. Rick Lake says, Carrie, hope you feel better. Well, thank you, Rick. Thank you. John Paul Bacon said that could be the whole issue. The case was made 5 or 6 years ago. Sometimes we don't realize, at least I don't, just how much has changed in the last 5 or 6 years. You know, I mean, this is a good appreciation for how far we've come, how quickly. We see so many people that they don't want to move on to Windows 11. Oh, my computer's fine. Your computer's 10 years old, for crying out loud. So if you're still running Windows 10 on it, let it go. I mean, look how much has changed in 5 or 6 years. Just with fans and RGB, imagine how much has changed on chipset, CPU power, and cycles, and just how much more performance has been added besides frequency. How much lower power the CPUs have become on top of, you know, their efficiency is insane. And when people want to hold on to the past like that, they do it to their own detriment. Yeah, it still works, but it's not a toaster. This isn't something you're going to pass on to your grandkids. No, it's temporary. The technology is constantly evolving, and if you want to be a part of it, you need to keep up, because if you don't, the consequences are going to be your lost identity, your lost funds, your inconvenience, your viruses, your compatibility problems, and your reliability problems. As this equipment gets older, you're going to have more problems with it. I try explaining this to people. If you look on computer repair on Reddit, people looking for help, they almost universally have old machines. The older the machine is, the more likely you're going to need help, and the more often you need it, the older the machine gets. And your insistence on keeping it running is fully your choice, but I can't get behind spending $300 worth of time to fix a $75 computer when you can buy a brand new computer for $150 with a warranty that's 75 times better than what you've got in every way, shape, and form. Performance, reliability, security, Windows 11 compatible, all of it. We just listed a mini PC here for $125. It's everything you need. That's probably at least 10 times better than any old piece of crap running Windows 10 at this point, and any refusal to accept that what do you need to get paid? You need somebody to give you the computer and pay you to use it? Like, if you're not doing this for yourself, why would you do it to yourself? And as a person running a business, I understand when somebody treats their computer like a toy. This is a novelty for me. I just have fun with it. Don't take it so seriously. Bottom line is that today, when people's little toys go down, suddenly it's not a toy anymore. Suddenly it's panic. They're freaking out. And I've got to calm people down before I can even begin to find out what the problem is. There's so much panic and anxiety that is totally avoidable from people who are often the most vulnerable, who won't take the basic steps to put the odds in their favor that they can at least reduce the chances of it happening. You can't eliminate it entirely. But the advice I offer isn't for my benefit. You're not going to call me for service either way. You're watching all over the world. I'm not going to get in the car and drive across the ocean to come fix your computer. I'm simply trying to advise you safe steps forward. And it doesn't mean you have to buy the latest and greatest thing. But if you're relying on something every day, and it's a computer, and it's over 10 years old, I hope you have a plan in place to replace that, ideally before the end of the year. Otherwise, you understand that you're kind of walking a tightrope with it, and you're hoping you don't fall off the tightrope. And if you do, the only one it's going to hurt is you. And there's so much people can do to help. It'd be so much better if you took some basic steps to avoid falling. Like, put a little safety net in or something. And it's maddening to me sometimes that people just delusion. They just don't think it's never happened before, Carrie. The internet is a much more dangerous place today than it was. And just look at how much things have changed just in the case in 5 or 6 years. Now take something complex like a motherboard and a CPU and an operating system, and look how much that has changed in 10 years. It's drastic. So you do you, but I hope you make an informed decision and you understand the pros and cons of either way you choose. But one way or another, you're not a victim, because if you're making a decision with the knowledge you've been given, and your decision results in some negative consequences, you knew better. You were warned. So you can't cry victim. You were warned. You always want to help people. It's always best to help people when there's not panic and anxiety involved. I need this fixed right now. I need your help. Everything's, I know, it's like a fireman. The building's on fire. It isn't on fire. Relax. But this is critical. Well, if it was critical, where's your backups? If it's critical, why is it 10 years old? Why have you procrastinated and put it off? Because if it were critical, you wouldn't have let it get that bad. But it was running fine. Yeah, until it wasn't. So anyway, this is part of the IT side of things that can be a little frustrating, because I do want to help people. I truly enjoy helping people. And then when people still make the same bad decisions, and then they want me to come rescue them when they were already told and warned, it definitely makes my job more challenging. And usually those are the people who can least afford to pay me. So what do I do? Walk away and say tough luck? I mean, I'm still going to do the best I can to help people. I just wish people would do the best to help themselves to prevent that situation from beginning and putting that obligation onto others, because it's, I don't know, selfish. But in the meantime, we all learn our lessons, right? If they do it once, they probably won't do it again. And if they do it again, that's it. There's no more free help. At least not for me. I'm done. I got other people. But, and I want to emphasize, we have an amazing community here who are always happy to help without such restrictions, okay? I'm just trying to keep moving forward. I don't want to get pulled backwards, and I want to help as many people as I can help. We have a community here that is very knowledgeable and very friendly. And don't be shy to ask them for help. And don't be shy to jump on our forums at carrieholzman.boards.net, where you can leave messages, continue conversations regarding purchase decisions, and a little help, a little guidance. advice. It's a very friendly community. And what I do for my viewers and the information I give, I charge my customers for. Just want you to bear in mind, in my shoes, everything I'm doing here, I am normally paid by a customer to do that. And I give it to the audience, I give it to the people who choose to watch the videos completely for free. And the difference is when a customer doesn't listen and a customer insists on doing things their way, and then they call me to make it right, it's a bigger bill for that customer. With the audience, I do my best to help everybody for free as much as I can within my ability, and also encourage you guys to help each other so that we can help. We're not putting that all on one person, and we can all contribute. And some of us are better at certain things than others, right? So where my strengths lie in computer building and hardware, someone else's strengths might be in networking or Windows configuration, such that we have all different experiences, that what we have in common is that generosity to want to help others. And of course, being able to encourage self-reliance so that you don't find yourself in that situation. And if you do, that you're not ashamed or bashful. You can come in and ask for that help, but hopefully you're just not constantly relying on it like you're getting a free butler, right? That you're using it to educate yourself, to strengthen yourself, so that you can continue to move forward without making the same mistakes. You learn from it, you appreciate those who've helped, and you don't exploit them to the point where they burn out and say, look, I don't want to help anybody anymore. I'm done being used. There's a fine line between asking for help once in a while and asking for help every other day, right? And so again, this is how I make my living. And if somebody wanted to ask me for help every other day, they'd be paying me every other day. So just keep that in mind if it seems like the attitude's a little cold. I swear to you, this is every business computer repair, all operates the same. And very few of them will take the time to make videos and give the information out for free. And then when people refuse to accept that advice, have the very problem I warned them about, and then ask for help, we'll still help them. Okay? I just want to be clear on that. I'm just looking in the chat if there's any final comments here. Rick Legg says, imagine 5 years from now, how the standards and cases will change. I think we're going to see a reduction in the number of personal builds. I think more and more people are moving to mini PCs, pre-builts, and tablets and smartphones. Businesses are not and never have adopted glass panels, RGB, or liquid cooling overall. Big corporations don't use them. And companies like Dell and HP will continue to sell 20, 30 million desktops into the business corporate market, as they have been doing every year for the last 20, 30 years. So I don't see a change happening in business. But on the consumer side, yeah, in the next 5 years, it probably will look very different. And most consumers won't have a PC at home anymore. Just the enthusiasts and the gamers. The people that are using this just to go online and pay bills or Skype with family or whatever. Oh, speaking of Skype, that's being shut down in May. Microsoft's transitioning everybody over to Microsoft Teams and will officially shut Skype down in May. It's done. Or its fate has been sealed. So there's something else that's changed, or that's changing now. Something that's a common word, Skype. You start talking to some young people in another 5 years and they won't know what Skype is or what the heck you're talking about. I find it amusing. A rotary phone? How does that work? Let's see. Scott says, thanks for the stream. Hope you feel better. Thank you, Scott. Sir Chris Kringle says, awesome show. Thank you for sharing your time. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me. I'm sure that sounds lovely. Listen to me sniffle. Dustin Fuller says, great stream as always. Thank you. Robert Jones says, in 10 years, we may have wireless computers. Last I checked, we have wireless computers in our pockets. I'm just looking through your comments to look if there were any questions I missed here. Mark Gaines said, Carrie, I was looking at all-in-one coolers for my next build. Came across the Trikes Panorama 360. It looks good, but have you ever seen one? We bought a Trikes 360 a while back, and it was originally supposed to go into the case that this motherboard we're putting in. That's all part of the story. It wouldn't fit. So I ended up using a different cooler for this. But the Trikes is sitting here on the shelf, and while I've not seen one in person, let's see if I can move some things here and I'll show you what it looks like in the box. It's still shrink wrapped, so it's brand new. And I haven't quite decided where it's going to go yet. The original plan was for the Panorama 360 to go into the Cougar case, but we ended up going with the Cougar Helor, and I'm trying to remember why. But now that we've got that case emptied out because it was getting overcrowded, it may be that I used this originally as planned on that Cougar case. It's definitely, from my research that I did before I bought it, is one of the most expensive coolers you can buy. It doesn't cool particularly well. It's okay, but it's not like a leader in cooling. This is putting the aesthetic over the importance of the cooling. However, if you're not overclocking and you're leaving the machine stock, it's adequate. The cooler has a three-dimensional LCD screen. Basically, it's an LCD screen that's vertical and horizontal. And when you look at it where the 2 points meet, it looks like something's coming out of the screen at you. You can see Japanese and I think Korean billboards where they demonstrate if you're standing on the sidewalk looking up at the billboard from an angle, it looks like things are coming out of the billboard without any 3D glasses. It's a really neat visual effect. And of course, it's massive on a billboard versus on a little screen here, but the little screen is probably $200 worth of this $350 cooler. So if you want that look, as far as I know, these are the only people currently that make it. And they charge a premium for it, quite frankly, because they can, not because that's what it's worth. If you're looking for a really good cooler, there are better options. But if you're looking for a really cool looking cooler, you maybe can't beat this. So $350 versus under $100 for something from Thermalright or, you know, another manufacturer that doesn't have a screen on it. The minute you put the screen on there, you're over $200. The fact that they've got basically two screens attached, it's one screen that's bent, you can about double your price for that, double the screen. How does it go together? Is it easy to install? I don't know yet, but that's coming up. And it's just going to sit over here on the shelf until we have time for it. So if you end up using one, Mark, you end up buying it and installing it, I'd love to know your thoughts. Mara mentions that she's updated all the video notes. That includes the motherboard and radiator we've not gotten to yet that were extracted out of the build from a couple weeks ago. It's sitting in front of me. You guys can't see it, but it's sitting right over here, waiting until the case is ready. And until I decide where that radiator is going, I'm not quite sure how to proceed, but this will give me some time to kick it around. It does appear most people want it up on top. I think it'll probably go on top. We'll go with what the people want, the bulk of people. And then given that these fans do not require the fan controller, means that using them is now okay. With the fan controller, it's not worth it. Like if those were proprietary fans, as I initially thought they were not too long ago, I'd yank them. I'm so tired of proprietary parts. There's nothing worse than having to postpone a repair because a manufacturer decided not to follow a standard. Again, this was 5 or 6 years ago, and the standard wasn't quite as solid as it is today. But nonetheless, at least CoolerMaster adapted from a standard to their proprietary connector, giving you the option to unplug it, and kudos to them for not just trying to cut costs, because if you could just make the fan with the connector all in one cable, that would be cheaper than having to put adapters on. So CoolerMaster definitely didn't go cheap when they built this case. It's almost like they didn't even care, because so much of this is wasteful. But it could have been done cheaper. But whatever reason, they made that decision. And it's an attractive looking case. I do like it. Jasmine says, good night, Carrie, and greetings from Stephen from the Netherlands. I am now watching you. All right, thanks, Jasmine. Or Steve. Stephen, thanks for hanging out with us. John Paul Bacon is telling Andy Kane parts for this build were from an earlier build. I think it was the helicopter. No, we took the parts from the helicopter and we placed them into the, what was that case called? That was a CoolerMaster case, but that's already been done. That was like last Friday or the Friday before. We've already done that. I know these cases, they all kind of look alike, and a lot of the motherboards look alike. But yeah, the helicopter parts were removed from the helicopter, or the Thermaltake AHT 600, I think is what it's called. It's designed like an Apache helicopter. That's a 10900K. This is a 14900K with an MSI Meg. It's a much bigger board. It's an EATX board, and it's 4 or 5 years newer. And it's all brand new parts, by the way. We fired it up, we got Windows installed, and that's about as far as we got. So everything's brand new RAM, brand new motherboard, brand new cooler. The 14900K CPU has gone up in price. So it was $433, and today on Amazon, I think it's $445. So despite people going, oh, that's a year old. Yeah, try telling that to the price. You know, they're going to sell it for what people are paying. So if you think that price is outrageous, try and convince other people, because if the price isn't selling, you know, if the product isn't selling at that price, you'll see the price come down. But essentially, as a seller, you want to get as much money as possible for your product. How much is that? It's as much people are willing to pay. But who decides that? You or me? No, there's in the United States, you build whatever you want. So if there are people willing to pay $700 for that CPU, then they're going to sell it for $700. And their goal is to always find that price point where enough people can buy it that they're making a profit. If they price it too high, they don't sell enough units, they don't make any money. If they price it too low, they can't make enough money. So the price is fluctuating constantly, and there's no way to predict it. There's no way to know if you would have bought it last week, it would have been $20 cheaper, $15 cheaper. And there's no way to know it might not be $50 cheaper next week. Who knows? Computer Lens said a shot of whiskey will cure that cold of yours. And the hot toddy. Let me say a shout out and a thank you again to all of our contributors during today's show. So to David Graham, NCG, as well as Mark Gaines, Gary Wall, Donovan Stein, Nick Caffrey, our friend Jack, John Wilson in the chat room, Ian Gooch, Peter in the Netherlands, Robert Jones, Planet Cryos, and our friend Buster. A shout out and a thank you all for supporting the channel with your super chats and your memberships. Speaking of memberships, a welcome in to Reese Prodis, who became a new member, and Craig Wilson, who became a new member, and a shout out to Stealth Mode, who renewed membership, as did Nick Caffrey, as did Mark Baggett and David Graham. Oh, and Shamim Kashviras as well. Thank you guys for continuing to support us and allowing us to remain independent. Andy Kane's been a member for 19 months now, and he says he's happy to be a part of this community. Andy, we are happy that you are a part of this community. Wouldn't be the same without you. Thank you so much for, you know, not only being a member of the community, but being a sponsor here of the channel as well. All the members of the channel, the folks that pay that monthly subscription, those are our sponsors. And those are the folks who make these videos possible. And a shout out and a thank you to all of you. And I'll check the phone one more time with one more thank you, because I know I had that one Amazon gift card. Let's see if anything else. Chris Johnson, that's who it was. Thank you, Chris, for the $25 Amazon gift card. And I do believe that catches us up. Yeah. All right. So I'm actually surprised I've gone this long without having a coughing attack. Hopefully, I'm on the mend. Things will get better soon. And if I'm not live tomorrow, then I hope on Sunday, I'm going to leave as much as I can, everything on the bench, so we can pick up right where we left off. You guys can ruminate, and I'll ruminate on this and how we go from here and any other thoughts we've got. I think it's important you always enjoy your build. Don't try and rush it through. This is so much fun to do. Why would you want to rush something that's fun? Take your time, think about it, and if you're not enjoying it, take a break. That'll wrap it up for me for today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday, the rest of your February, and onwards and upwards to March and the weekend. I'll see you all again very, very soon. A shout out once again to Marlena, our channel administrator, for all the tireless work she does in the background, and our friends at SCD Keys that can offer you a much cheaper price on Windows license keys and Office keys that are guaranteed to work with 6 months of support at a discount using our coupon code in the links below this video. Thank you for watching, and until next time, bye for now.